Hey losers, I'm Coral. Welcome back to my channel. If you're joining me for the first time, I like to read things that are depressing and stressing. So if you're into that, welcome to the party. Pew pew pew. Today I am here with the books that I read in the second half of August, and let's just say I maybe got my reading mojo back. Probably in part to what I read, because for the most part, I really liked the things that I read in the second half of the month. In total, for this month, I read 13 books, which does include one DNF and one reread. 5 of these books were off of my TBR, so that means I owned them previous to this year. This month I read 4,234 pages, which is about 136 pages per day. The oldest book I read this month was published in 1978, and the most recent was a 2025 release. I read 8 horror books, a literary fiction book, 2 nonfiction books, and 2 true crime books, so I guess in total 4 nonfiction, but I like to be specific. I'm also doing the Read What You Own challenge, which is a challenge where you read books that you own, and I wasn't super great at prioritizing that this month, but I did end up reading 5 throughout the month that count towards that. So my running tally for what I have left is 65 books. Will we make it by the end of the year? I don't know. Part of the problem is that I have like so many holds at my library, and I'm glad that I'm utilizing that instead of buying those books, but it does kind of take away from my Read What You Own challenge shit going on. Okay, let's see, where do I start here? Some books that I don't own physical copies of that I listened to this month. First one, which was on Everand, is called The Mother Next Door, Medicine, Deception, and Munchausen by Proxy, which is by Andrea Dunlop. This is a book that came out this year, and it is about medical child abuse and factitious disorder. I feel like that was really put on a public stage when Dee Dee Blanchard died, because she had been making her daughter Gypsy Rose sick for years and years and years, and making her pretend like she was more ill than she really was, and falsifying medical records and things of that nature. That's really what this is about. It talks about a couple different cases of mothers specifically, because for the most part this is something that's perpetrated by women, for the most part, not always, but for the most part. I think there was like 3 or 4 mothers that they talked about in this book where, yeah, things were not good. Personally, hot take, I think that, does everyone remember the Take Care of Maya documentary that Netflix put out, and how Netflix often puts out biased reports about things in documentaries, kind of like the Stephen Avery thing too, where they sweep things out of the rug and they definitely have a narrative that they want you to follow? Well, I think that Maya Kowalski's mother also had, it's medical child abuse, right? That's really what it is, but a lot of people know it as Munchausen by proxy, so I think that she had that. And there's a lot of stuff that that documentary left out on purpose. So it's kind of crazy. I kind of, when I watched that, I was like, wow, what? And I was like, this poor child, this poor mother. And then when I was like reading things online about it, well, it wasn't quite like that. So that's just a little sidebar. Things that I teach myself sometimes. So yeah, very, I mean, sad to put it this way, but an entertaining book, because this information does come at the expense of somebody's health and sometimes somebody's life, and those people are children, and it's very sad. So yeah, the medical child abuse thing is like really interesting to me because of the implication, right? First, it's really hard for people to believe that mothers would do that to their children, even though we know, and even though there's been a case like the Gypsy Rose Blanchard case that is huge. There's documentaries, there's shows that are highly dramatized, so like we know it happens. And then with like this Maya Kowalski thing, it sets a precedent because her dad, her remaining living family member, or parent, I guess, won a shitload of money suing the hospital that took her away from her mother. That was, I mean, they were giving her this ketamine treatment that should have killed her. It was like a 50-50 chance that she would die, and her mom was like really pushing to do this, and it didn't kill her the first time, luckily, but then her mom was pushing to do it again, and it's like, why would you do that? I just can't, I can't. I mean, I don't have a, if you think about like, this child is sick, which I don't believe she was in that way, I still don't think I would risk something like that. And now it sets this precedent that hospitals can be sued if they think a child is being abused and take steps to protect that child. Like, it's so dangerous, and doctors can be sued. Like, these are people who are supposed to, what do they call them? Mandated reporters, right? Like teachers and therapists and stuff like that are supposed to report if they think that this is happening. So if doctors can't do that anymore, what's gonna happen to the children who are abused? It's crazy. Okay, that's it. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I also listened to this book called Murderland, which was by Caroline Fraser. This was another like true crime nonfiction book, and this was interesting. This author has a theory about why there were so many serial killers out of the Pacific Northwest who were born in like the 40s and 50s. So they were committing crimes in the 70s, like Charles Manson, like Ed Kemper, like Herbert Mullins, like Ted Bundy, like Jerry Brudos, like Gary Ridgway. So like I don't remember. They talk about Dennis Rader in this too, the BTK killer, but I can't remember if he was born there, because they do also like kind of talk about some stuff that was happening in like Pennsylvania area like that. It's a really interesting theory. It's something I have kind of heard of before, but not it being so focused on the Pacific Northwest, which it is weird when you think about that. You're like, what happened? Is it nature? Is it nurture? A really interesting theory. If you are curious about it, I'd recommend reading it. I did really like it, although it was kind of long, and the author also grew up around that same time in the same area. So she does interject parts of her life which kind of bring a stop to the narrative. It breaks up the narrative in a way that sometimes didn't, it didn't feel good to my brain, you know what I mean? Because I'm like, oh yeah, I want to continue to listen to this part. And then she's like, well, in 1978 I was. And it's like, well, that doesn't, it's not really important to the story, you know? But whatever. I still liked it, I guess. It was just, you know, not necessary. Now, one I'm just going to very quickly go over is The Ruins by Scott Smith. This was published in 2006, and this is my favorite book reread for this month. I got back to it. I'm so glad. This was, I have a lot to talk to you about in a different video about this, but this is a great book if you haven't read it. My TBR jar star for this month was 1,000 Naked Strangers by Kevin Hazzard. This was published in 2016, and I was a little bit hesitant because sometimes when people are writing like career memoirs, they get a little, I don't know. It's just like, are you really that good of a person at what you do? Are you really that good at what you do? But I thought that this was really down to earth. It was good. It was interesting. And it's just really like a slice of life, of this man's life, where he, for a while, was a paramedic. And he worked in a area of, I believe, Atlanta? I know for sure Georgia. I feel like Atlanta, that, you know, he responded to a lot of stuff. So it was interesting. Is it something I'm going to think about for years and years? Probably not. Unless for some reason I think I'm going to become a paramedic in Georgia. But I'm not planning on doing that anytime soon. But I will say, like, if this, like, medical nonfiction stuff is really interesting to you, which it is for me, why not pick it up? Why not? It's a pretty quick read. And it was just really entertaining. I also finally read the heartbreaking book, The Buffalo Hunter by Stephen Graham Jones. This was his release for earlier this year. I think it came out in March, and I've been putting it off partly because I really like this author's work. And then my brain is like, well, let's just read that next month, or let's read that next week, or you really want to take your time with it, so let's just wait a little bit until you have the bandwidth for it, right? I don't know why I do that, because I really like his work, and I really like this. It is not my favorite of his books, and I don't mean that in a bad way, because his, like, my favorite books that he's written are like my favorite books of all time kind of stuff, so it's like, this is not one of my favorite books of all time, but it was really good. It was written in a really interesting way. There's not any part of the story where I could have guessed what was going to happen or what was going to go on. The end especially, it took a turn that I was not expecting at all, and it was great. This is about a man in like the 1910s who is a Lutheran pastor in maybe Wyoming? I think I might have, I don't know. It's kind of Western, right? His name is Arthur. We're reading his journal, and he's telling us a little bit about his life, but also about this American Indian man who keeps coming in, and he's like confessing to this pastor, and he's telling him the story of how he became the way he is, and it's a like beautiful vampire story, a story about like revenge and pain, and like the pain of losing your people. It's really so heartbreaking, honestly. And even towards the ending, you're like, oh my god, I don't know, it broke my heart in multiple ways, in multiple places. At times it's like hard to read, but also it's an important thing to read, and it's important that we have books like this. I just really fucking love Stephen Graham Jones's work. He has a very beautiful, very identifiable way of writing, and I think he really, it's like he's putting his heart and his spirit out on these pages for us, and it you can tell when you read his writing. He's a fantastic author. Honestly, like one of the horror authors that I think is going to be known for like decades after he's done writing. Then I read Dead Mountain by Donnie Eichar. This is a nonfiction book about the Dyatlov Pass incident in Russia in the Ural Mountains. And I really liked this. This was an excellent book. It's a nonfiction that's written in a way that really catches you. Like, it has a very clear narrative, and he does this thing where he is also traveling to Russia to take the path that the Dyatlov group took through the Ural Mountains. He's gonna hike it himself in the winter, and he's the first American to do it. With the help of some Russian natives, of course. But he weaves together the story of him trying to figure out a way to do this, and also the journey of these people itself, and also the aftermath, because they were all found. I believe it was 9 of them who died. 9 of them who died. Mysteriously. He does have a very convincing theory, of course. So it's just like, it's written in a way that's so compelling, because you want to understand, and you want to understand his theory, and you want to understand why the other theories are probably not plausible, because there's some goofy shit there. There's like, they ran into a Yeti, they saw an alien, and then there's also more plausible ones, of course, but yeah, he gives a great theory at the end. And I think what I really enjoyed about this is learning a little bit about Russian culture, which is not something I know like jack shit about. and it's interesting. His experience, you can kind of see maybe why most Americans don't know a lot about Russian culture, because they do seem like they're very private people for the most part. So yes, I like this. I like this for the story, I like this for the writing, and I like this for the like pieces of information that I learned. And the end is horribly heartbreaking, so there you go. Great nonfiction book though. Okay, and finally, The Cellar by Richard Laymon. This was published in 1980, and boy, I read this for Garb August, and it did not let me down. This was so trashy. It was not good, but it was very entertaining. I've only read 2 of Laymon's books now, and I just don't think he's actually a good writer, but he can be very entertaining, and this book was entertaining. So this is about a woman named Donna who is trying to flee with her daughter from an abusive husband who was just recently let out of prison. And then there's also where she flees to, they have this house called the Beast House, where if people go into it at night, they get eaten up and mutilated by a creature. But no one's actually sure if it's real or not. There's this kooky old lady who runs tours of it. She used to own the house until the beast, well, she still owns it, but she used to live in the house until the beast killed her family. So now she gives these schlocky tours like Lorraine Warren or some shit. And Donna and her daughter meet some people who want to figure out what's really going on with the Beast House. So it's like these 2 stories that really shouldn't fit together, I don't think. Like, I think that's really my problem with it, besides the fact that it's just really obvious that it's a weird dude writing a woman in a way that is like not good, and her motivations and her actions are just so whack, and like not anything any woman I would know would do unless she was like a really bad mom, right? Like if my friend was like, oh yeah, we went here and then I met a guy and I got into his car with my daughter who's 12 years old, and the daughter has trauma surrounding men, and then we went to this place I didn't know where it was gonna be, and then I met this other guy and we got in the car with him and like we had lunch, I'd be like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, this behavior is troubling, and the way it's written is like it's a normal thing that anyone would do. So it's not just the writing and the way Donna's written, it's also that this story about her fleeing her husband and him being like the worst person in the world, and the Beast House stuff seems like they should have been 2 different stories that he just slapped together. It's not really very cohesive, but that's just my opinion on it. I still found this highly entertaining. I read it before page 50. There were 2 rump references already. Also, at one point, they call the women's boobs dugs, which is so disgusting. Oh my god. So yeah, it was trashy, that's for sure. Hi, I'm getting 400 emails right now because one of my professors is changing all the due dates of all of his assignments, and I get an email each time that happens, apparently. All right, well, that is what I read in August, in the second half of August at least. All of these very entertaining, I will say that. Would I recommend all of them? Probably, for different people and different situations. So I'd love to know, if you've read any of these, what you thought about them, what you got up to this month. I hope you had a great August, and I will see you later. Goodbye!